involvement in that, okay?
So
I'm arresting you on suspicion, okay, of that offence.
Hello, I'm Sunderland Echo reporter Kevin Clark. I joined the Echo in September 1992, initially based in the Washington office. Barely a month after I arrived, Wearmouth was rocked by an horrendous crime that would shock the nation, see an innocent man wrongly charged, and launch a mother's fight for justice that would take more than 30 years to bear fruit. This is the story of the murder of Nikki Allan and how killer David Boyd was finally convicted. This is High Street East, in Sunderland's East End, just a stone's throw from the port of Sunderland and the city's historic heart. In October 1992, the southern side of the street was dominated by Weir Garth, one of a number of flats complexes built in the area during the slum clearances of the 1930s. It was in one of these flats that 7-year-old Nikki Allan lived with her mum Sharon Prest, now Henderson, and 3 siblings. It's the evening of October 7th, 1992, and Nikki has been to visit her grandparents in their home within Weir Garth. She sets out on the short walk home down a stairwell, the last time she is seen alive. When Sharon follows shortly afterwards, Nikki is nowhere to be seen. The Garth is a close-knit community, and the news that a child is missing spreads quickly, with more than 100 people join the search, but to no avail. The worst fears of the community are realised the following day, on October the 8th, when Nikki's body is discovered in a pool of blood here, in the then derelict Quayside Exchange building in High Street East, just yards from the Garths. The little girl, who is identified by her grandfather Dickie Prest, has been stabbed multiple times. This grainy CCTV footage is captured on camera around 1 minute away from the building where the 7-year-old has been murdered. The footage, as you see, is of poor quality and shows 2 figures, one adult-sized and one much smaller, walk in the same direction. At the eventual trial of Nikki's killer decades later, Richard Wright KC will say, "It is the final, tragic glimpse of Nikki before her murder." That court will be told that a passerby hears an unnerving noise from inside the old Exchange building, which at the time she thinks is, quote, a cat wailing or the wind howling. Another witness tells of hearing a, quote, short-lived but piercing scream from a girl, followed by a second similar sound. All of the sounds are heard around 10 p.m, just minutes after the CCTV recording, which is at 9:57 p.m. Juries in the 2023 trial will also be shown video footage of the outside and inside the building and the basement. The footage shows drops of Nikki's blood outside, where prosecutors say the deadly violence started. It shows the blood-stained brick and bloodshed from Nikki when she is hit with it. The video shows stairs down to the basement, also stained with Nikki's blood, and drag marks amongst debris in the abandoned building. The final frame shows the image, which has been pixelated, of Nikki's body on the ground. A suspect is arrested on October 9, 1992, one day after the horrific discovery, but released 2 days later without charge. On October the 18th, 1992, just 10 days after Nikki's disappearance, neighbour George Heron is charged with her murder. Heron appears here at Sunderland Magistrates Court the following day. Feelings are in high among the community, and hefty police presence is on hand as he appears in the dock for the first time. He is subject to threats from the public gallery, and a man lunges forward to attack him as he's led away back to the cells. Outside, an angry crowd bangs on the police van as he's taken back to prison. While on remand, George Heron is slashed across the face by an inmate and left with a scar. Several more attempts are made to attack him when he finally goes on trial at Leeds Crown Court just over a year after Nikki's death. The case collapses in November 1993 when a judge accuses police of using heavy-handed tactics and refuses to admit a taped confession as evidence. With little other evidence to go on, Heron is found not guilty after a 6-week trial, and later tells the Echo he feels he will not be able to return to the North East. He has spent 13 months in custody. The following year, Nikki's family takes out their own action against Heron in the civil courts. He does not contest the case, and with a lower standard of proof on the balance of probabilities rather than beyond reasonable doubt as required in criminal cases, he's found liable for Nikki's death. Sharon Henderson is awarded £7,000. Though it was understood she never received a penny. With Heron held legally responsible for Nikki's death and Northumberland police confirming they aren't looking for anybody else in connection with the murder, that seems to be that. Sharon, however, is not content to let matters lie and embarks on a one-woman campaign to keep the case in the public eye. In September 2013, a Crime Watch reconstruction produced a number of new leads, but no arrests. The following February, Northumberland police arrest Sunderland serial killer Stephen Grieving on suspicion of Nikki's murder. Grieving is serving 4 life sentences for the murders of Thomas Kelly, 18, David Hanson and David Grief, both 15, in 1993 and 1994, and of Simon Martin, 14, in 1990. He is questioned and bailed, and Sharon Henderson writes to him, asking him to cooperate with the inquiry, but detectives later say his bail has been cancelled, and he will face no further action. In August 2015, in the run-up to what would have been Nikki's 30th birthday, Sharon describes the family's feelings at the lack of progress on the case. "We're just devastated after all this time. We've got nothing," she says. In September 2016, she calls for full reinvestigation of the crime and launches an online petition urging Northumbria Police to carry out top-to-bottom review of the case, which attracts more than 500 signatures in less than 24 hours. In April 2017, the force announces that it has dedicated a new forensics team to finding Nikki's killer ahead of the 25th anniversary of her death. Sharon meets with Chief Constable Steve Ashman and senior officers from the team here at the force headquarters in Middle Engine Lane in Wallsend to discuss the latest developments in the case. The new team makes good progress. In October 2017 comes confirmation that new DNA belonging to an unknown male has been recovered. Police appeal for anyone who came into contact with Nikki before she went missing to come forward and give a mouth swab sample so they can be ruled out of the inquiry. In April 2018 comes the news the family has been waiting for almost a quarter of a century. A man has been arrested on suspicion of Nikki's murder. He is, it later emerges, former neighbour David Boyd, by now a convicted paedophile.
Boiler.
David?
Yeah.
Hi, how are you doing?
I fixed it, mate.
No, I'm from the police. Come have a word.
Yeah, yeah.
Cheers. David, this is Terry. This is Marty. We're part of the team that's reinvestigating the murder of Nikki Allan.
Yeah.
Okay. Part of that investigation has led us to suspect that you may have had some involvement in that. Okay. I'm arresting you on suspicion, okay, of that offence. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your offence if you do not mention, when questioned, something which you later lie in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Just leave your phone there for a moment. Just put your hands out for us. Thanks.
What about me clothes?
Well, we'll sort that all out, don't worry. Right, now do you understand what I've said to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Now give us a second, I'll just check these cuffs to make sure that they're locked and not too tight.
Which police station are you taking me to?
We'll be taking you to Northumbria, which is up in the Newcastle area.
Route to arrest P1, is there an update from editor?
Just 2 seconds. Do you have any medication that you need to take?
Yeah.
So we need to take some with you, if you've got some. Right, now.
The medication's in the kitchen, mate.
Right, what is it? Yeah.
I don't know what it's called.
Right, not to worry, we'll get all that.
Can I have your
Can you have your what? Oh, yeah.
put my trainers top on?
Of course you can, give us 2 seconds. Do you want to just take a seat first? We'll get your medication sorted.
Yeah.
Is your medication obvious? Is it like in a box or packet or?
It's in a packet.
Right, when you get your shoes on, I'll take them cuffs off so you can help you get your top on. Is this the one you want?
Yeah. What about my dog?
We'll get that sorted. We've got some other officers coming to look after your house while we're away. And we'll get them to look after your dog.
Shit, you know, so if you give it to my girlfriend.
Right. Well, we'll get that all sorted, mate, don't worry. Before we leave, there'll be other officers coming here to look after your house, and they'll look after your dog as well.
What evidence you got anyway?
Back in the day, there's a picture at the back of the building. So if I show you those, you might be able to confirm then. So, is this how you can remember the back of the building? Just for the record, that's TR5. It looks like quite overgrown, and there's a bricked up window there.
Yeah.
And then we've got TR6.
That was one we went through, I think.
Right. Okay, so you're putting, there's a window there that looks half boarded up, or maybe 3/4 boarded up.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
go for it in there, in the middle.
You would go into
Yeah.
that. All right. How high is that? Because it's difficult from a picture to view. Can you remember how high that is to get into?
Well, I couldn't tell you.
You can't remember.
I can't remember.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I know it's pretty high because I pulled myself up.
Right. So you had to physically pull
Yeah,
yourself
yeah.
up there. Okay, and you would have been what, 25 at the time?
Yeah.
Like a grown man, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So you remember that being quite high?
yeah,
Okay. And you said Colin was just a kid.
yeah.
So how did Colin get into there?
Just him up and that.
You lifted him?
Yeah,
up?
yeah.
Right. Can you remember doing that?
No, not really. I
No.
suppose that's how he got in.
Right. Okay. What I don't want you to do, David, is just guess things, all right? You know and I know and everyone else in Sunderland knows that Nikki's body was found inside the old Exchange building in Hendon on the morning of the 8th of October 1992, and she'd been murdered. Scientific examination shows us that the most likely point of entry for Nikki into the old Exchange building was via a lower window at the rear of the property, which was accessed over a brick wall. This is the window that you confirmed that you entered the building via during your trip to Colin Pearson only days before. Yeah, we showed you on the photograph, and you confirmed that. You confirmed, or you suggested then that you'd had to help Colin into the building. You said you had to pull yourself up. Yeah.
He's interviewed several times before being released pending further inquiries. In April 2019, Boyd is rearrested and questioned. The ongoing investigation is hampered by the COVID pandemic, but police still managed to approach and DNA test 839 men from around the country to eliminate them from the investigation.
Why would you have gone in that window? Was it not boarded up?
It wasn't boarded up, was it?
Right.
It was the only window that I could see that wasn't boarded up, you know.
Okay.
Except for the top ones there. I think they're open, you know.
Right.
So,
we're over the wall. We're coming out of the building. There's a one open window which would seem to be the only access point. That window, is that onto the first floor, ground floor, basement? Do you know?
well, when you go through that one, it's on the base. I mean, the ground floor.
Right.
Isn't it?
So it's a ground
It's not
floor
like
window.
underneath, it's on top, you know.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First floor, they call it, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah. Because
Because downstairs is, what do you call it?
basement.
Basement, that's it.
In October 2019, Nikki's mother Sharon Henderson leaves a tribute for her daughter at the scene of her murder. 27 years after that terrible day, she continues to appeal for anyone information to come forward.
I came down because this is the day Nikki's body was found. And please, if anybody's got any information about Nikki's murder, please come forward. Been operating for the family and the community.
Boyd is finally charged with Nikki's murder in May 2022 and appears before magistrates. April 20th, 2023. The trial opens here at Newcastle Crown Court, with jurors showing a video of the scene where Boyd had dragged and dumped the little girl's body. Richard Wright KC, prosecuting, explicitly tells the jury that it was David Boyd and not George Heron who was responsible for Nikki's death. Boyd is convicted of murder on May the 12th, 2023. On May 17th, at a press conference here, Assistant Chief Constable Alistair Simpson tells reporters he has written a personal apology to George Heron on behalf of Northumbria Police. The sound quality of this recording is the best available in the circumstances at the time.
The interviews that were conducted back in the day were oppressive, and some of the evidence was misrepresented, and therefore George Heron confessed, and we know that the judge excluded that confession. So in terms of lessons, and this is on a national scale as well, the way that we interview suspects now has changed massively. So peace interviewing was brought in as a result of some significant failings in cases historically. From a police point of view, interviews, and in particular the way that we conducted the interviews of Boyd, they were planned with absolute precision. Because we're very much mindful in terms of what had happened in the past. It's a stark reminder of how things are just done so much differently now. In 2016, this is when I first became the Senior Investigating Officer of the Nikki Allan murder, and in around April that year, that's when I had my first meeting with James Chapman, who was the scientist in this case, where we knew that the new forensic techniques were coming into being, so it was an opportunity for us to review the exhibits in the case to see whether there was any potential to identify who was responsible. So that was the starting point. If you then fast forward into February 2017, that was the first time that we discovered that we had an unidentified Y profile, so male DNA. Following from that, Sharon Henderson met with the then Chief Constable Steve Ashman and myself, where she has campaigned tirelessly for years around a reinvestigation. So we knew at that point that potentially we had something around that unidentified profile. The Chief Constable at the time agreed for a reinvestigation, and that's when, as an organisation, extra resources were put on for us to try and identify who that belonged to. Pulled the team together and we started to look at males in the original inquiry who potentially could match that DNA, and also people who potentially could have had innocent contact with Nikki, so it could have been through contamination or something like that. So we pulled together a matrix, and the initial matrix, there was 212 males within that matrix. So we first started taking DNA from people in July that year. We went to take David Boyd's DNA on the 4th of October 2017. And on the 3rd of November, that is when we got a match to David Boyd. And that was the first point where, from my point of view, I've looked and I thought potentially we've got something here. We did a lot of work around David Boyd, and on top of that we still started to look at everybody else in the inquiry, and those are the 212 males, to work out whether anybody else was present. Fast forward to 2018, so in the April, that is when we first arrested David Boyd on suspicion of the murder of Nikki Allan. We interviewed him comprehensively, as has been reported in court. He denied the offence. We continued with the investigation, and the big part from my point of view was to try and show and establish that it couldn't have been anybody else. We continued with the testing on the clothing in terms of to see if we could find any more DNA, and we did. We got another hit on the t-shirt. So therefore, fast forward to 2018, and we arrested David Boyd for the second time, and again he was then released under investigation. We continued with looking at all of those other males, and just for context, in the inquiry there was 1,226 males that we've had to investigate within this inquiry for us to first of all try and obtain their DNA, and then to try and make an assessment as to what their potential involvement or otherwise in the inquiry was at the time. We narrowed that down to 126 males, where we have really done a deep dive into them to work out where they were at the time, to see if they were alibied and to corroborate their accounts. We've seen hundreds and hundreds of witnesses, and we have spent hours revisiting that to show that it couldn't have been anybody else. Sharon absolutely needs to be given credit for the work, the campaigning, and not giving up. It's a really challenging and complex investigation. We don't underestimate the impact that this has had on Sharon and the rest of her family. So in this investigation, we've had a dedicated family liaison officer who has worked with Sharon prior to me coming onto the case, and then when I came on, Nicholas Skakel was the dedicated family liaison officer who has supported Sharon throughout the investigation. And I think what's really difficult for Sharon, and I've been out to see her several times, is this investigation has taken a long time. So every time I would go and see Sharon, you know, her expectations would have been raised in terms of where are we, and to try and articulate. And there was only so many things that I could tell her in terms of the level of investigation, and we needed to make sure that we got it right. So I completely understand Sharon's frustration for the length of time that it's taken, but it had to be this way to enable us to get, you know, a conviction at court. So when we first obviously got his name, clearly we've started to do some investigation around him, and that was the primary reason, as well as in what risk does he pose now? Is he committing any offending? So yeah, we have taken that into consideration around him throughout this case, because he's been released in the community for a significant period of time, which has been beyond our control. So we've made sure that there was measures in place. Yeah.
We know now that David Boyd had a bit of a checkered past and had previous convictions. Why was that not picked up on in the first investigation, and why was that maybe missed initially?
So I think the first investigation, they focused on George Heron effectively. In the original investigation, there was a number of people, in fact there was 118 people who were nominated as matching that artist's impression back in the day, and there was a number of other people who had been nominated as potentially responsible. So the amount of people that had been brought into that investigation at the beginning, they weren't looked at. The focus was on George Heron. Forensic techniques are advancing all of the time, and this particular technique allowed the scientist, so you've got your Y chromosome from your dad and your X from your mum. This allows the scientist to just extract the Y profile, so the male. So if you've got, so in Nikki Allan's case as an example, that, you know, her blood was there, which makes it quite challenging to try and extract any DNA. with the Y profile technique, they were able to just extract the male DNA.
Well, I think I am truly sorry for the mistakes that were made in the 1992 investigation, and I'm sorry for the length of time it's taken to get justice for the family. I can't imagine the impact on them over the course of the last 30 years, so I have offered to meet with Sharon and with other members of the family.
There's some footage that has obviously been passed to the press. He said something significant on arrest, and he kind of asked, like, what evidence have you got?
What evidence have you got anyway?
Which isn't necessarily a natural question that you would ask if you were locked up for a child murder. And then in interview as well, he was shaking constantly in interview, and I think observing the interviews, it looked like he was kind of concerned, but he was not going to admit the offence. He was not going to admit what he'd done, and we saw that in the trial. He's put the family through the most horrific detail of the investigation that they've had to sit and listen to, and not just that, the jury as well. Absolute relief from my point of view that we've got the right person, and he's now off the streets.
On Tuesday, May 23rd, Mrs Justice Lambert sentences Boyd to life imprisonment with a minimum tariff of 29 years and tells him the minimum would have been 37 years, but for the fact that she is bound by the sentencing guidelines that would have been in place at the time of the murder. The impact statement of the wrongly accused George Herring was also read out in court and released by Northumbria Police. This is an extract from that statement. I've had to read and hear, both online and offline, malicious lies being spread about me and my family, some of whom are now deceased and whose funerals I didn't get a chance to attend. In some cases, I didn't even find out about their deaths until months later. When I was arrested and interviewed in October 1992, my DNA was taken and has been held on record since then. The police would have been able to check it against any developments, advances in science. Moving around several times and trying to rebuild what is left of my life hasn't been easy. Learning to trust anyone is difficult, and I haven't even felt I could trust any professional to get help. I've had to learn how to adapt on my own. Trusting the police has taken a long time. They still make me nervous to the point of feeling nauseous if I'm alone with them. I don't understand why the original officers couldn't have admitted they made a mistake, apologised and looked at the case again, instead of having a blinkered view and not trying to put things right. It is really difficult to put in words what I've felt since 1992, going from trying to look out for my family to having my life flipped upside down. Nikki Allan's murder destroyed so many people's lives. I'm just one of those people. I could be angry about being unfairly treated from day one, but this isn't about me. It is about getting the real truth out of the open so our family, what is left of mine, can have some closure and finally try to move on. I hope that people don't blame the present officers for the mistakes that were made in 1992 and 1993. It's not their fault. It was probably difficult for them reopening the case, and they should be given credit for the work they've done, trying to get it solved. And so, more than 30 years after the young girl's disappearance, more than 30 years after her mother's campaign for justice began, and more than 30 years after events were set in motion that would derail an innocent man's life, Nikki Allan's killer is finally jailed.